Ask the Podcast Coach for August 30th, 2025.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that music that means it's Saturday. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com, and joining me right over there is the one and only Jim Cullison from theaverageguy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. Happy, I think it's International Pancake Day or something like that.
Wow, there we go.
Everybody should be having pancakes today.
That's it.
But anyway,
Stack 'em up.
We're here today. I already see that I'm rocking and rolling in the chat room. Good morning and happy Saturday morning to you.
It is, and August is toast. It's just toast. It's like I looked at it and was like, wait, I know it's Labor Day weekend here in the States, and it's just weird to think that New Year's Eve was like last week, and now summer is over. It's feeling
Christmas is already here. Like this, if you haven't done your Christmas shopping, there's no time left.
I did see Halloween stuff out. I'm like, guys, we have August, September, and October, and I'm like, we got 2 months till Halloween, and this stuff is already out.
What's the store that pops up in broken down malls and shopping centers that have empty?
Something, yeah.
What's the name of that? You can always tell it's fall when that thing pops up in a.
You're like, oh wow, the CVS went out of business, and then oh wait, there's a store in there. It's
Halloween Central. It's
something like that.
I mean, obviously, I care a lot about it, but you're like, oh, fall's on its way. It's football started.
That's
it this week,
and
so
of
college
course,
football, yeah.
What is it? The pumpkin latte,
pumpkin spice latte.
Yes. Yeah. So that's always,
But you know what's better than a pumpkin spice latte?
That's it. That's right.
Fresh cup of coffee.
There you go. And that is brought to you by, and I'm going to bring up the slides, and they're not ready. Dave was doing other things this morning, and we're still on the last slide.
You were talking to me.
So I'm going to go backwards now before I hit the music, because I want to, wait, where? Okay, yeah, there we go. That coffee pour is brought to you by our good friend Mark over at podcastbranding.co, because they're gonna see you before they hear you, and I see a lot of bad artwork that we don't need your face in many cases. We don't need a microphone. I don't know who told you that green text on a brown background or blue background that's another one, blue and green. No, you need somebody who's been a graphic artist for a while that knows what works. He makes really pretty stuff, whether it's your artwork, whether it's your full website, whether it's a PDF or a PowerPoint. He's been podcasting for quite some time, which is also an added bonus that you don't have to explain to him what a podcast is. And you basically tell him what your show is about, and he'll meet with you one-on-one. You're not going to get that from a guy on Fiverr, and he's going to make you look amazing. So when you're ready to look good, go over to podcastbranding.co and tell him Dave and Jim sent you.
Big thanks to our good friend Dan Lefebvre over there, based on a true story podcast.com. A couple weeks ago, Dan was in chat and he said, no podcast is released on my site until it's ready, until it's time. And so last week we talked about Amelia. This week we'll talk about Amelia. It's still out there, still available for you. I mentioned last week I love his cover art. He always he takes the original cover art for the movie and then makes his own version of it, which is super cool. Sometimes it's strikingly close. Other times it's a take on it. If you're kind of interested, if you're thinking about cover art or art in general for your podcast, it might be worth popping out there and taking a look at what he does. And you can check it out today, based on a true story podcast.com. And of course, as always, Dan, thanks for your sponsorship and for just coming out and being a part of the chat room each and every week. Appreciate
I was at the movies last night, another horrendous experience filled with gallons of ads. And but there was one new movie called Eden by Ron Howard, and it actually looked pretty good. And of course, it said based on a true story. And I was like, oh, as soon as I hear that phrase now, Dan just comes into my brain. And
True Story podcast.
Yeah, the thing we were looking for is Spirit Halloween.
Yes.
That is the name of the store that pops up.
Spirit Halloween. It just seems to it seems to go in overnight. It was a Cracker Barrel. Speaking, that's a whole nother topic. It was a Cracker Barrel yesterday. today, Spirit Halloween. You're like, how's that happen so fast? They kind of just grow in that way. So anyways.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about Cracker Barrel?
No.
No. That's the only lesson. No. Yeah, because that's just a big cow. Yeah.
It's got all kinds of implications in it.
That's true. Like we could go. So actually, you know what I have instead? We have voicemail. That's right. We actually got an actual question. And this is from Jill from flamealivepod.com. She is an awesome supporter. And she has this question.
Hey, Dave and Jim, it is Jill from Keep the Flame Alive. I was doing the one thing we're not supposed to do, which is look at podcast stats. And we've got Libsyn. I noticed something really weird this month. We've had a nice bump in terms of downloads, but in terms of user agents, Thinkbot topped Apple Podcasts this month. And Thinkbot accounted for about 25% of our show's downloads this month. If you compare it to last month, Thinkbot was between 1% and 2%. So I had never heard of Thinkbot. Tried to do a little research, didn't find a whole lot, but it seems like it's some kind of web crawler bot. What do you all know about it? And if it's a bot, like how do we think about downloads from it in terms of actual listener numbers? Thanks so much for all you guys do. I really love this show.
Thank you, Jill. Yeah, this is one. First, I would reach out to Libsyn and go, hey, we got a bot. And for whatever reason, IAB is not blocking it yet or whatever. And I tried to do some research. I went to a bunch of very nerdy sites, and no one could either say yay or nay on is this absolutely bad. Now, if it's above Apple, that to me is a humongous red flag that this is probably not real. Everything I read about it is some sort of web crawler, but like, okay, Google's a web crawler. So it's something, whatever it was, went a little haywire. Because usually if it's a bad crawler, you can find info on the internet that says, yeah, this is not great. It's fake. It's whatever it is. And so I couldn't find anything like that. But everybody, even I went to Perplexity. And Perplexity was like, well, it's kind of a thing. It's a web crawler. It's, but it's definitely a bot. Now, the thing that sucks about that is now if you're dealing in a situation maybe with sponsors and they want an accurate number of your stats, you have to go into Libsyn, and I think this is only available on the $20 plan. You have to download your stats and do it by user agent and then remove that one because those aren't real, which sucks. But this happens from time to time where it is the whack-a-mole and it is the mole that got through the whack. And so I would let the guys at Libsyn know, and they can go in and either, tweak their system or alert the IAB or whatever needs to be done. But yeah, and you're not the only one. When I was researching, there were a lot of people like, hey, what is this Thinkbot? Because it just sounds like some sort of new AI tool, right? Which is probably what it is. Who knows?
It probably is.
But it was very weird, and it was like, So I wish it could be more help, but there's just whatever it is, it's new, and there's not enough info on it, and that's kind of the problem. The other thing, we got another question in from our good friend Kim Craggy, and I think my answer works, but Jim, are you an iPhone or an Android person?
I am an iPhone person.
Yeah, see, I'm no help either. I'm an iPhone, because she's like, what is a great podcast app for Android? And I think she said she tried Spotify and things like that.
Pocket Casts.
That's what I said, Pocket Casts. I said, because I love me some Pocket Casts. That's the one that I recommended. If anybody else is on an Android and knows one that works, there are there's the podcasting 2.0 stuff. So Podcast Guru, I know, works on everything, but Pocket Cast is my favorite app, period, at this point, no matter what you're on. And the biggest thing I love about it is DR says, unite droidnoids. Yes, the thing I love about Pocket Cast, it's a little pricey compared to other ones. It's like, I want to say $30 or $40 a year. But I love the fact that I can be listening on my computer. and then pick up my phone, go to the kitchen, and hit play, and it picks up right where I left off. I don't know how it does it that quickly. And then if I go back to my computer and forget that I have the app running, and I go to the web-based version and I hit play, it picks up right where I left off. It's somehow always synchronizing, which would be a lot for any kind of server. But if I remember right, I think they're owned by WordPress now. So they've got some teeth behind it. Randy Black says Podhome just put out a new really solid app. I've heard a lot about it, and they have a page where they're showing Podping, which is that thing that basically is always checking or is alerting people that there's a new episode. And Stephanie says Pod News gave out premium trials last year, and she's really been enjoying Pocket Casts. Jody Krangle says you can create folders, and I have it for free, and I use it on my desktop too. Yeah, it's Pocket Cast. It's in the top 5. It's usually Apple, then Spotify, then Overcast, and then Pocket Cast, and then maybe Podbean, which is always weird. But Podbean,
Overcast is iOS only, though, right?
That is true. So is Cast-O-Matic is another fun one. It's kind of the 2.0 kind of app, but it's only iOS. So that's the problem, is you need one. So for me, it's Pocket Casts. And even if I had, like I have an Android tablet, in theory, I could install Pocket Casts on that, on my Android, hit play, listen to 3 minutes, hit stop, pull up my iPhone, and pick up right where I left off. Stephanie says, I might pay for it, though. It's really nice. My favorite feature, because I'm always wanting to put bookmarks in, like, I need to come back, or I need to talk about this on the show or whatever. When I do the podcast hot seat, I listen in, I find the episode you want me to listen to, and then I can go in and put bookmarks where I want to give you a note about, this was really good. This was really good. Okay, I got confused here. I use that. Danny from Captivate checked out Podhome. Developer clearly doesn't know Canada is a big podcast listening and producing country. Not in its country drop downs. That's hello. Well, it's new, everything. Like I went and played with I forget the name of it now, but Blueberry came out with a guest hosting thing where, it's basically a dating app for podcasters where you find guests. And when they released it at Podcast Movement, it wasn't bad. It was like every other, guest matching service, but there were parts of it that I was like, nah. And I was like, it is the first week of being live. So, you got to sometimes give them a little bit of a break.
I miss the old days. Spreaker had, you could buy your own app from them. Like they built this, they had like a templated app, right? And you could buy one for iOS and for Android, and then they'd put it in the store. You had to create a developer account, some other things to make it work. I think it was $100 a year per app or something like that. And I did that for a couple years. I got, 25, 30, 40, 50 people to listen to it that way through the app. But it was an option for folks who didn't, if you have a podcast that is fairly niche-y, or it's in an audience that may not be podcast app savvy, like we're talking about right now. So this is what kind of reminded me of that. If my mom wanted to listen to the podcast, you're like, well, you go buy Pocket Casts. No, my mom's not going to pay for Pocket Casts, right? Even and on iOS, it's a little bit easier. On Android, it's kind of a nightmare to find the right, podcast app. So for me, it was it worth it? I don't know. But for me, it was interesting to have my own app. And that may be something, depending on how big your podcast is, how much money you want to spend. But that may be something where you consider having someone write an app for you, and the podcast gets embedded. And then you could also deliver other things to them that way. So again, depends on your audience, depends what you're trying to do. It depends on the community you're trying to make. Certainly, we live in an age where making an app is not that hard anymore. And you can probably pay somebody to do it pretty quick. So that it'd be a consideration. I think maybe, we don't talk about that very much, of having your own app for your podcast where people could go in and listen to it. We've spent a bunch of time at Gallup talking about this. We haven't done it yet, but it might, for you, it might be worth it. So take a look at it, think that through instead of, again, just giving you could just deliver the podcast through it, but I think you'd want to deliver other things as well to keep the audience engaged in what they're listening to. So just another option.
Yeah. Rich Graham says, can Pocket Cast do playlists? What they do is you make folders. And then what's cool is you can say, this podcast is in my marketing folder. And then I can go into the marketing folder and easily see like what shows have new episodes. I don't know because I liked Castmatic and the other one that's always number 3 that I can't remember, Overcast. I like their playlist ability, but folders kind of work like that. The thing I like, because I wasn't there seems to be 2 schools of thought. Either you have playlists or you have a queue. And so with Pocket Cast, you kind of have folders. And I believe if I'm in the marketing folder and I click on a marketing episode, I think the next thing that come up will be another, something from that folder. So that acts like a playlist. I need to double check on that. But you can go into a folder and say, hey, when this one comes out, download it. And then there's an extra level that says add it to the queue, basically add it to up next. And so if you're kind of my top string, like I must listen to this episode, it goes into the up next queue. And then if that ever runs dry, and it does occasionally, but not very often, I will go into like, what am I in the mood for? Oh, let's go listen to politics. I'll go listen to Jen Briney. Or actually, Jen Briney's in the up next one, but you get the idea. So it's a little bit of both. But I just, for me, I'm really picky about apps. And I liked Overcast for the longest time. I went back after they rebranded, well, not rebranded, but redid their interface. And I was kind of like, ugh. And the fact that Marco is kind of a weird dude. He had the link for the funding tag. So there's a little $sign. You could have people go to your PayPal. And then he took it out because he was afraid of Apple. And then the whole Apple thing went through where now, different courts have kind of stopped them from being so aggressive on things. And I'm like, good. So Marco's probably going to put the funding tag back, and he hasn't. And it's his app. He can do what he wants. But it was just a guy who was like, you know what? And then I went to Castamatic, which is so close to Overcast that I thought Marco had a lawsuit ready. And that one was fine, except occasionally it would just pause. You'd be in the shower and you're like listening to, Pod News Week of Review, and all of a sudden it just stopped. And you'd be like, and finally I learned I could say, hey, woman on the iPhone, resume Pocket Cast, and that would do it. But it was just weird that it would just stop for no reason. And this is after all my episodes are downloaded. I'm like, I don't want to have to stream anything. Put it on my phone. I got plenty of room. Daniel says Marco never actually supported the real funding tag. He had a custom thing that would figure it out before the funding tag even existed. Yeah, that's what I always thought it was weird, that he had this thing. He loved the idea, and I'm like, well, now that there's something built into the namespace, yeah, Dan says you can create a filter in Pocket Cast that function basically like a playlist. There you go. So it is the best of both worlds. So hope that helps, Kim. I wanted to share something. I got to hang out with awesome supporter Shane Whaley. I was at the Content Creator Expo in Cleveland this week, which was interesting because I just got home from Podcast Movement, spent a couple nights in my bed, and then last year I did the thing where I would drive home at the end of the night and then wake up really early to drive back, and then you'd stay for the party, and then I was like, that killed me. So I stayed in Cleveland. But Shane was telling me about readwise.io. And what this is, if you're a big Kindle reader, which I am, it will take your highlights and email them to you. In fact, I have one on my screen here. And so this is free. They have a paid version, but like from Pat Flynn's book, Superfans, with your audience and make them feel special. So these are just things I've highlighted. Alone in the desert, then with a quarrelsome, complaining wife. That's from the 1 Year Bible. The Christian Atheist. So stop worrying and taking advantage of what he's offering. Do what you can. It's a bunch of Jesus stuff, and that'll turn people off like nobody's business. But it's basically saying, but here, something from our buddy David Hooper from the Big Podcast Book. If you're concerned about keeping up a release schedule, but not sure there are enough quality guests to interview on your podcast. Either change your release schedule to something you can deliver on, or learn how to do solo or co-hosted episodes that don't require guests. And so it's kind of I don't know what at the bottom. You have 27 days left of your ReadWise trial. So I'm not sure what happens when the free version is over, but Shane was just saying it's so cool because you like, oh, I totally forgot about that book. Or it basically reinforces what you've learned because you kind of forget about it. And there was some guy at the very end that is a major SEO player. He had an interesting take. He said, and this is I saw this work in real life, which is the more people that know you, the better. And he said, because Google already has lost a lot of its integrity, right? Because there's so many ads on the top. I'm just looking for some, because Google became popular because Netscape and Hotbot and, all these other ones, Google just gave you, I didn't have to search this month. They gave me great answers. And that is not the case anymore with Google. So less people are using it. And he said, AI, he goes, what's interesting about it is it gives you decent answers. It's giving you links. He goes, but the fun thing is, he goes, some of this stuff, they don't know how it came up with the answer. He goes, with Google, if people start gaming the system, they can change the algorithm and it makes everybody mad, but it does, again, with the goal of having the good stuff come to the top. He goes, you can't tweak AI. He goes, because they don't know how it's coming up with the answer. And he goes, so eventually people will get tired of, and this one I'm not sure of, but he was basically saying AI doesn't give good enough answers. And I'm like, I don't know about that. He goes, and we're going to go back to what we used to do, which is just ask your friend. And I was like, maybe that's why when I go to Reddit that everybody's asking the same 5 questions because they don't trust it. But I was like, I'm not sure I'm buying that. But
there may be some truth in all of that, right? I mean, there may be little bits of truth. I think sometimes when we talk about those topics, we're like, it's always going to be this way, or it's going,
Right.
and it's never 100% anything, right? It's always kind of, you got folks. I love we ask the same 5 questions because we want to get some validation from humans. But you like we talk about host providers, right? That question used to be kind of relevant. Who's the best host provider? Well, they're
Right.
all pretty similar now. Like they have variations, and you should check them out to make sure you're getting the one that's best for you, right? But so we ask each other, because if you ask the AIs, you get a bunch of garbage. I just went to one of these today as we were talking about podcast players. I was like, I wonder what the internet is saying about podcast players today. So of course you do a search on it and you get the top 25 podcast players for
Right.
2025, right? It's an ad machine, right? You
Right.
get there and then you look at the print and you're like, oh, this is obviously written by the person who's number 1, or
Oh, of course.
right, or whatever. So then you go to you can ask the AIs that. I think today right now is maybe the best time to ever get the best answer from AI that it's ever going to be, because friends, sponsored posts or sponsored AI things are on their way. Like, let's be really clear about this. It may be the honest it ever is right now. And you may be saying it's not honest now. And there's probably some truth to that too, but it's only going to get worse. It never gets better. It's only going to get worse on those from those. Dave, we're always going to need a combination of all of them. Listen, certainly there's times when Google search is helpful still. There's times when the AI is super helpful. And then there's times when people are actually helpful.
Yeah.
So
Because Danny says it's not like your friend's going to have any bias. And I'm like, it's true.
For sure. Well, that's it. We'd ask you, and you at the time you worked for Lipson, right? And you say, well,
right.
I don't, this is me. Well, is it you? I mean, yes, you can say that, Dave, but is it now? I know you, so I know it'd always be an honest answer. But but we do, even when we want to give what we think is unbiased answers, we're biased.
Oh
And
yeah.
you can't
Can't get away from it.
anybody who says, I'm reviewing this unit and I bought it, so I'm not biased. Okay, all those things are true, but you're still terribly biased. So we all come with biases, right? It's just part of the gig. So yes, we can say it and we can try and all those other kinds of things. But at the end of the day, there's certain things we like, there's certain things we don't like.
Yeah.
It,
Jody
it tends
says,
to flavor our reviews. Yeah.
yeah, Jody says so much AI slop on the internet right now. YouTube is becoming an AI ad dumping ground.
Oh,
Yeah,
for sure.
at the event, this one guy said that AWS, so Amazon, who hosts a lot of websites and I don't know what else they monitor, who knows, but they said that 57% of new content is generated by AI. And so that was the big takeaway. And you'll hear me talk about this in 2 weeks on the School of Podcasting, is lean into your humanness. We've said this before. Stories, be yourself, because that's what sets you apart. Because everybody else, it's going to be weird if you're in the, if you're in the business of selling information, getting the information is not going to be hard. I mean, it's we could always say just go to Google, but it's going to be interesting to see just if again, is the information you're getting from Claude going to be something, because everybody's in the chat room has been saying, yeah, those things hallucinate all the time. And, they kind of just make stuff up. In fact, Craig, another awesome supporter and member of the School of Podcasting, Dr. Craig Van Slyke, does AI Goes to College. And he was talking about how in some cases, the longer AI goes on, it just starts making up stuff. And it was a really interesting article. It's on his Substack. I'll put a link in the show notes after I find it later. But it was a really interesting read where you're like, oh, okay, that's not good. You know what I mean? When it just starts making stuff up.
Well, just remember, right? AI is we'll go back to the old tool analogy, right? An AI is a hammer, and if you're trying to use it as a screwdriver, it's not going to work for you. And I think some folks approaching AI today are like, they're trying to make it do things that are best for a screwdriver and not a hammer. And then they're like, well, this thing doesn't work. So just remember, I mean, it's a language model, right? They're really, really, really good at writing for sure. They're really good at editing. They're great at, I should say, better at translations, things that have to do with words. Some of the models have been tuned for math and code. And so when you go into those models, you can give it specific problems associated with code, let's just say, some of those. I think, and then there's a whole new brand of relational models that they're building. Microsoft's a part of this. Grok actually has a little bit of this kind of built into it, where they're kind of tuning them to be relational, right? In the way they speak to you, in the way they engaged with you. Those are fairly interesting. In the early days, you mentioned Craig, in the the longer you would go. In the early days, that was a very big problem. Like 3 or 4 years ago, they would go off the rails. I've had long sessions with these things and have gotten really good results so far. So I think that part is getting better. They have figured out how to extend these conversations in some regard to make sure they don't get a little wacky on you, whether they're resetting them in the background or I don't know what the magic is on that one, but they are getting interestingly, I think, better. So for information and some of those kinds of things, listen, they are definitely holding them back, right? I mean, I think they learned from the first round of AI that we did where they had some social problems with them. I think they've learned that you got to put some guardrails on them. So there's certain things you can't do with them, certain queries you can't send. They keep them from, like, if you said go search the entire internet, no, they're not. That's not going to be allowed. That would consume more bandwidth, right? Some of those kinds of things. So certainly some of them have limitations. And then here's what I'm finding too: the prompts matter, right? And prompt engineering matters. And I get lazy sometimes in my prompt engineering, and I'm like, well, why can't you bring back the Magna Carta from the 2 words I gave you? Right. It's like, well, okay, no, I probably need to be a little bit smarter about my prompting. I did a query this week where I dropped 2 Excel spreadsheets in there. I wanted to compare them. and not just a simple comparison, but we wanted to go across multiple fields in the spreadsheet, and not all of them were named the same, and some of them required some fuzzy logic. Now, this would have been, if I would have had to write code to do this, should have been a good afternoon of code writing to get all, for me anyways, to get maybe you guys listening could do it in 5 minutes, but for me, that was going to take a while. So what was interesting, Dave, is I put the two in, I told it what things were, and then I told it where the joins were. I said, hey, this column should equal this column, and some of these kinds of things. And then as I started writing the query, it was like, yeah, no, you don't. Do you want me to do it this way? I'm like, yeah. So it did it. And then it came back and it told me what it did. And it said, here's the results. We might want to think through this as far as the way this is constructed. And it took me, I don't know, 45 minutes probably to work through that to where I got all the results boiled down to the way I wanted to. But the prompts on the backside of me helping me build the prompt were what's most important. I think I said this on the show. If you get a chance in your bot or whatever you're using, to say, make sure you're prompting me at the end of this, giving me ideas of how to write better prompts, that sometimes can be really, really helpful to you. It will give you clues on how you could have written that prompt better to get better results out of it. So make sure you're using it too to help you. It'll give you clues to how to code with it so that you can give it the proper prompt. Because as Stephanie said, prompts do matter in this case. And it can't read your mind. I sometimes get frustrated with it because I'm like, can't you just understand what I'm trying to do? It's like, no, it's like an intern. You got to tell it exactly what to do. Otherwise, it's not going to be able to get it done.
Yeah, one of the things I like Magi about, besides the fact that it gives me access to ChatGPT and it's got a built-in bunch of custom GPTs, is I can write in a prompt and then click a button and it will look at my prompt and then say, oh, let me rewrite this for you so that you're giving, the tool the best kind of thing. Yeah, that's really, really cool. It's all about the prompts. Ralph had a comment. He said, getting info is easy, but putting it together is why you need to hire someone like me with 30 years of experience. That's why I'm going to do a live show. And that actually, that is true, because just because you read it doesn't, sometimes you need somebody to explain it in a way that makes sense, not just the facts. And also, what I used to love about dummy books back when they were new, right? I'd get the book about, Microsoft Word 6, and it would tell you all the features. Like, here's what it does. Here's what it does. The dummy books would explain why I would use this, like what's the benefit and where I would use it. So that's what made dummy books so great. They're like, oh, here's an example of when you might want to try this. Here's another example of when you might use this feature, not just here's the feature. So yeah, making the info easy to digest, but the problem's going to be now when AI tells us something, we can simply say, can you use that in a sentence, please? Or can you give me an example? Or, so.
Well, listen, you still, this is not a time to disengage your brain. This did not make us thinking any different. It takes away, it's like when we created calculators, right? We could do math before. We just created a device that allowed us to do math faster and quicker. We still do math. We still have scientists out there doing math. The calculator didn't replace, even though your high school math teacher told you that you were never going to learn math again. People know math, right? These language calculators, so these AI, right? They're just that for language, right? They just make the language faster. And to Ralph's point a little bit, listen, just because a person's a human doesn't make them true either in some regards. You have to engage your brain, right? How much bad advice is out there in podcasts?
Oh,
right? Right?
It was funny. I heard somebody at an event explain how you should put keywords in your description for Apple. Right. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure Apple doesn't look at the description. Yeah. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And then I looked up and I'm like, oh, look, it's Ted from Apple. And I go, does Apple search the description? He's like, no. And he's like, well, at least not now. And I was like, they do search the transcript. That's new. But so that's why we should just be saying, naked people, naked people, naked people. So now when people are searching for naked people, they'll find this show. and then be horribly disappointed that, we're not naked.
Well, both with AI though and people and humans, we do need to do the same tests, right?
Right.
Which is, in other words, test the advice. If it's good advice, take it again. If it continues to be good advice, trust it, right? And that's the same. It can be the same thing for both people and AI. And then you got to constantly be checking. I mean, sometimes I've known folks for a long time, and then all of a sudden, these are humans that go off the rails, and you're like,
Right.
oh, well, So I think we still have to live in a world of trust and verify on everything. So, and listen, I'm preaching to the choir here. You guys all know this, but
Yeah.
I think it's just really, really important. We trust and verify at all times for both people and for AI to make sure. And then at the end of the day, listen, the decision you make is yours, not theirs. So make sure you're making decisions you're good with. And I'm not saying don't get advice. I'm just saying at the end of the day, continue to engage your brain. Humans are still needed for a long time to make sure we're engaging our brains. So make sure you're using that.
They've been doing a thing on the No Agenda show where they're getting feedback from teachers. Like kids in the, 10th grade can't recite the months. They don't know what half a dozen is. There are a bunch of things that you're like, wait, what? It just makes it sound like our kids are morons. I'm like, so read to your children. Get them interested in books.
Well, okay, but let me defend that for just a second here. Things have shifted that kids today know things that are important to the world they live in. And listen, you can come up with 1,000 places where this goes wrong, but there's still. I worked with a lot of smart students here over the last 20 years in the internships I've done. It's a lot of smart students out here. They know things, Dave. They may not know what half a dozen is, but they may know how to code. Like they may know how to write
Right.
software code to be able to get to that point. Why does a dozen matter? That's such an antiquated. I know it's 12, but it's such an antiquated number. Like
Right.
we do very little with that anymore for the most part. Yeah, we can buy eggs in a dozen. Most cases it's 18 now. And so,
Right.
Like nobody buys yeah, sure you buy donuts in a dozen, but nobody cares that like
Right.
so what, right? But are there certain things that they could do way more advanced? Yeah. Yeah. And so I think there's things sometimes in this area we take old ideas and they're like, oh yeah, you don't know how to put mortar on stones that build a house. And it's like, well, we don't build houses that way anymore.
Right.
Why do we need that skill? Can I pour concrete? That might be
Yeah.
or cement, depending on what
Well,
area you're in.
My favorite is when it's $1.06 and you give them a penny. I think I got this right. Now I'm going to make fun of my own self.
Oh boy,
But
here we go.
yeah, I'm doing math live. Yeah, so and you give them like a penny, so they give you back a nickel instead of 4 pennies or whatever it is, and you just wait. They're like, but I already rang it up. It says I owe you, $1.04, and you're like, yeah, here's a penny. Just give me a nickel, and you can just see them like, what? I
Yeah.
don't
Well,
understand.
this is a super great example. Like we're using so little cash these
Right.
days.
That's true too.
So the old timers are like, you can't even can't change anymore. And you're
Yeah.
like, why would you need to? Like,
Yeah.
I swipe a card and I'm out. And by the way, the old timers could never do it anyways. Right?
Well,
They say this and then tell them, okay, give me change for 34 cents. And they're like, you're like,
yeah.
okay,
Well,
settle down, old timer.
I'm going to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on Monday because it's a holiday, and they have things all over their website. This is a cashless operation. Don't come in here with your change purse, old man,
No, for
because
sure. Yeah.
they're like, we don't take cash. And I was like, that's interesting. John Domingo says, yes, give us a 5-star review to help our podcast rankings. Yep, people are still saying that because they've heard it so many times. John also had a question. Go ahead. You took a deep breath. You were going to say.
I was just gonna. Before we moved on, I was just gonna wrap up that segment. That I think then the podcasting advice is a great way to emphasize this. I mean, even in the last 10 years, our podcasting advice has changed in some regards into some of the things we say, and so just make sure you're always getting the best information that's for you, right? From that standpoint, and then to go back to the cache versus cache list. I mean, we don't live in a world anymore in podcasting. Remember when we were hand coding RSS feeds?
Oh,
Like
I do.
we don't need to know how to do that anymore. That would be like Adam Curry saying, "Well, you need to
Yeah.
be able to code your RSS feed,"
Yeah.
and you're like, "No, we don't need to do that anymore." To say someone's not a good podcaster because they can't hand code an RSS feed, would we say that today? Some people might. I don't know. We wouldn't say it.
No.
So
Um,
yeah,
I love
things were
Craig. Long live the fortnight, because already my brain's going, is that weekly, bi-weekly? Wait,
every
what's that mean again?
every other week, I think is what that means or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Craig, who again teaches English in Spain. Friend of mine gets essays from his students that have been written by AI. He uses AI to mark them and
You bet.
sends them back.
Guys, this is the future. Like we can't this is getting in business today, everybody's using AI to write their copy at this point. What we need to do is figure out how to get students to write copy better and faster using the AI. And then, because at the end of the day, the goal is just really good copy. Doesn't matter if it's original or not, right? It needs to be great. No, when you put an ad out, nobody cares. It just needs to be good copy. So we're going to make this switch over. I mean, we did this for the calculator. Oh, nobody's going to be able to figure out math.
Right,
We
it's
got comfortable
true.
with a calculator. We'll get comfortable with this. Can someone write a whole paper? Those days are over, friends. That's
Yeah.
the cat is out of the bag. The horse is out of the barn. Like those days are over. Like it or not, time to embrace it, friends.
Yeah. I'm trying to find John Haddock. Here we go. Can you move your RSS feed too many times?
Oh, that's a good question.
I moved from Libsyn to Captivate. Now I want to try Podhome. Do you see any issues, and how would that interfere with Podpage? Podpage follows the redirect. So the key to this is when you move after you've imported into the new home of your show. So if you're moving from wherever, Captivate to Podhome, so you do the import. Then you go into Captivate and you redirect to Podhome. And then in theory, everything should follow that, because that redirect behind the scenes, the nerdy phrase, it's a 301 redirect, is basically saying John doesn't live here anymore. He lives over there. And so the apps then go, oh, John doesn't live there. So the next time they go, so in Apple Podcasts, it's looking at the Captivate feed. And now it says, oh, wait a minute. And it looks at the Podhome feed and it updates. So the next time you start Apple Podcasts, it goes to Podhome. And so I wouldn't move it too quick, and I would just make sure that I would hit like the top 5 and just make sure that it's still updating after you've put out an episode. So if I've moved to, host number 2 and I put out a new episode, I want to go to all the apps and make sure that it's not in, whoever your first host was. It's only in, the new host. And when I see that new episode show up everywhere, I know that everything is looking at your new feed. And so from there, you're like, okay, good. Everybody knows. It's like moving from 123 Main Street to, 507 Johnson Street. Great. Everybody, here's my new phone number. Everybody's calling me on my new home phone. I know everybody's got it. And once you're there, then you're like, great. And now if you want to move again, do that. Just, it does. Anytime you update a feed is the thing I say, just don't multitask when you do that. Make sure that the links you're putting in have no spaces before the link and definitely not any after the link, because that's where, I had a guy at Libsyn that had a typo in his feed, and he just redirected his entire audience to nothing. And he was like, how do I get that back? I go, well, you could buy that domain and set up a feed. It was nasty, but I was like, I would just go back and change it and realize that anybody over the last 3 days that has checked your show is no longer a, subscriber. They're gone. So, and then Chris asked, well, what is the best host provider? And the answer is, of course, it's a podcast question. It depends. If I'm all about WordPress, Blueberry. If I'm on a budget and I'm only going to put out an episode maybe twice a month and I don't need dynamic stuff, Libsyn all day long. My 2 favorites, well, 3 really, are Captivate which has a bunch of new stuff coming down the pike. Buzzsprout, both of those because they have dynamic content. Buzzsprout would be if somebody wants easy, their interface is a little better, but not by much. But Captivate has a much better business model where you can have multiple shows, and in 99% of the time, your bill will not go up. You have to get 30,000 downloads on Captivate for your bill to go up. And if you're getting 30,000 downloads, I'm pretty sure you can monetize that stuff. And then my third would now be Transistor, because it's basically Captivate Lite. Same business model, multiple shows, things like that. They have dynamic tools, things like that. So it depends. Now, if I want all the podcasting 2.0 stuff because I'm doing a show about Bitcoin, then, boy, that's a good question. I might still stick with Captivate because Captivate has a lot. Blueberry has a lot. Buzzsprout has a lot. If I want all the bells and whistles, then I'd probably go with Podhome. But that whole streaming Satoshi thing is kind of limping along right now. Now, if you're in the crypto space, it's not limping along and it's going gangbusters. But for the average Joe person, so I always say it depends. I have I think if you go to podcastmediahosting.com, I have a post on this on the School of Podcasting that just explains, here's what this dynamic thing does. Here's what this does. Here's what this does. And then it says, here's who has that feature. And then there are people like Podbean. Podbean fired their entire American staff and replaced them with marketing people. I've always found Podbean's interface clunky. And if you're on their lowest plan, they will upgrade you prompt to death, where it just seems like every button you click on is like, you need to upgrade. And I get that. That's how they get people to upgrade. But I don't hate them. I'm just like, they're not, for me, they're a less annoying options. And Podbean's website, I do see where they've updated this. It used to be really hard to put a button on their website to point to Apple. And I'm like, wait, what? Because they wanted people to listen to your show in the Podbean app. And I was like, no. So let's say, Randy says, I walked away from the streaming payments and closed down my value for value music show. It's just, they made it too hard. And I asked Adam at Podcast Movement, I got to talk to him for 2 minutes, and I go, if I don't want to use Alby, I go, how do I tell people to set up value for value? And he talked about Fountain and some of these other ones, but it's I don't want to say it's dead because it's not, but I would only recommend that now to people that are, doing a show about crypto. And I'm really sad about that. I wanted to, I'm hoping that when they come out with I'm surprised Apple hasn't come up with some sort of digital coin, or I know they're coming out with a stable coin in the US. But I'm like, so I don't think that idea is dead. I'm hoping it will come back because I really like that. And I also think like Captivate and Buzzsprout both have the ability to sell your back catalog. You can just say, this is a premium one. And, Mark Maron was making $200K a month doing that. Now he had really good back episodes, but I think subscriptions are the better way now for the indie podcaster to make that. Or if you're just going to ask for donations, like I know Daniel now at the end has the audacity to podcast.com/give back. And so, there are still, I have, I think 2 shows. Like I listened to Podcasting 2.0 last night, and I have that in Cast Magic, which is tied to my Alby wallet, but I'm very close to just waving the white flag on that. Danny says, looking at the stats on Podcast Index, it shows how many podcasts receive sats, and it's pretty low in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, it's such a bummer. That's why I started the future of podcasting was I thought this was going to take off and we could give that. And now it's like the future of podcasting is, so, what do you
the future of podcasting is tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's out there. Listen, I think we'll make another run at this digital currency for podcast and podcast support. Just wasn't, I don't know if we were ready yet.
No,
right? I don't think the technology's there. I don't think enough people were there. I don't think it's an average guy solution. I don't, there was a lot of things that needed to happen, but you got to try it a couple times before it really works well. And I think we may be in a situation coming up here. Unfortunately, if anybody got into the value for value and you had Satoshis that you were getting, if you had been early and just held on to them, they'd be worth 4 times what they're worth now. What they were worth then. So if you did nothing with your Bitcoin stuff, it would be now 4 times more value than it was before. So hopefully you didn't sell those things off, because Bitcoin's doing really well right now. I think we're going to need a blockchain. So someone's going to need to dedicate a blockchain to this. And then we're going to need tie-ins to the various fiat onboarding, right? So like here in the United States, like a Coinbase we're going to need to be able to come in through an easy thing like Coinbase, then move things to and from that as easy. This was the hard part, is everybody was trying to set up a decentralized or whatever, something along those lines of getting that done. And it just was, like you said, if you have a user that has to set up something, it's probably not going to work. It has to be easy. So I think somebody will be smart enough to make another run at this, what we called value for value, and it could work. I just don't think we're ready. I don't think the technology was there for sure. It's just it was fairly complicated,
too hard.
It was very hard.
When I talked to Ted from Apple, when that was really taking off, he's like, I know we can do it. He's like, but for Apple to embrace it, it has to be easy. Like he was just easy.
Yeah.
John says, I was thinking Pod Home to create a RSS for live streaming directly to podcast apps like Fountain. And I had Daniel explain how to set up a live tag, and my brain exploded. I was like, you lost me about 7 steps ago. And I was like, because I've got, radio.com, or I have some live streaming channel that's just playing loops of Your Podcast Consultant. And I know if I wanted to, I could add that as a live stream, because back in the day, internet radio used to be a big thing. I remember I had an internet radio station. I could go in and see where, hundreds of people listen. And now I look at it and it's like tens of people have listened, but it's another way to live stream. Before I get to some other questions, I wanted to share one other thing that I learned while I was on the road, and man, did this come in handy. It is, and this is not, unless you think everything I do has an affiliate program, this does not. SpotHero.com saved me a chunk of change, because when I was at the event in Cleveland, the parking at the Hilton was $50 a night. And I was there for three nights, I think. And it was $43 for all 3 nights at Spot Hero. And so you basically type in an address and it says, let me see if I can find a parking spot for you. And it did. And it was, 3 blocks away. I was like, I'll walk 3 blocks to save $150. And so I did the same thing. I'm going to the Rock Hall on Monday. I was like, I don't know what the parking is up there. And I found one, like, I think it was 40 something bucks to park at the closest one. I was like, hold on. So I pull up my Spot Hero. I found some place it's like $6 a day, and it's like 4 blocks away. And I'm like, it's supposed to be nice on Monday. I'm saving myself $40. So I was surprised. So it's SpotHero.com. If you're going to any, live events or, anything where you're going to be parking. I know, I forget where we're at. Chicago. I think it was Podcast Movement in Chicago. And Daniel had found a parking place adjacent to a hospital that was cheaper. And so this is kind of that idea. Let me find a hotel adjacent that isn't going to charge me, because hotels just like, brought to you by the same people that charge you $9 for a bottle of water, And I remember, I'm so old, I remember when parking was a thing that, was provided so that you could actually come to the hotel. Now it's like, no, if you're going to be on our property, we're going to charge you because we can. So that
I will say on Spot Hero, be really careful that you see the distance. You were talking 3 blocks, right?
yeah,
Make sure you're looking at the distance, because I was just doing some searches here in Omaha, and
yeah,
the only place you pay to park is downtown. But if you're not
right.
from Omaha, you don't know that. So if I was going to the Exarban area, which is another shopping area, all that parking's free. But Spot Hero tries to give me suggestions downtown. It doesn't say, "Hey, that
Mm.
area is free." Like, so if you were from out of
Ah,
town, you might think, "Oh, I can't get any where am I gonna park? How is this gonna work?" So, just remember as you're looking around on that there may be some areas where you're thinking paid parking might be appropriate, and it's not. You can just park for free.
yeah. Jeff C says, so glad the Gaylord is done for podcast movement, but who knows how expensive New York is going to be. That was me. I was like, when I heard James Cridlin announce that podcast movement is moving from, the Gaylord, I was like, yes. And it's like, and they're moving. And from what I understand, New York is the permanent home. Like, it's not like New York next year. It's New York from going forward. And I was like, well, the winner in that equation, in my opinion, is one Chris Krimitsos and Podfest, because I've been to New York once. It was fun, and I did some touristy things, but I don't know. I'll be interested to see. I mean, I'll go next year to New York, I believe, unless it's just absolutely ridiculous. But that's an industry event. And I talked to Brian personally. He said, no, we're still all about the creator. And I'm like, okay. And he's not lying, but I think he thinks the creator makes more money than they do. Because, and James Cridlin had a great idea. They should do what podcast show in London does, which is they have different types of days. And so they could have like industry days, maybe Wednesday and Thursday, or on Thursday, and then have the kind of independent days on Friday and Saturday, so that they don't have to burn a vacation day. And then, I don't know, then everybody could go on that day, see their friends, not have to have 3 nights of hotels. Let's just make a day for indies, and everybody can fly in on that day, high five each other, pat ourselves on the back, and then go back home. I don't know. So Steph says, do we know where New York? No, because New York's a big place. Although I do love the Bronx. The Bronx was fun. I went to the something air radio, some event there, and they had some really good brisket in this place that was amazing. And I also found out, I'm pretty sure, like if you're a parent and you put your kid on the sidewalk waiting for the bus, if you leave them there longer than 10 seconds, somebody will come by and spray them with graffiti. There's just graffiti everywhere in the Bronx. And what I heard, because that makes me nervous. And Akron, if you got graffiti on the walls that hasn't been cleaned, it's like you're not in a great neighborhood. And in the Bronx, they're like, no, that's just what we do here. Everywhere is that. So, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with podcast movement. Chris says, I bet the indies at these events is less than 5%. And we'll see. There was, the people I met at Podcast Movement that were really new to podcasting were from Dallas. They were local. So they probably weren't staying at the Gaylord, and they were just coming in. So we have Ralph has a question, but before we do that, talking about awesome people like Ralph, we're going to talk about these awesome people. You can be an awesome supporter. Mike Ecamm is doing really, you know what it is? I think, is that it? Very interesting. You can be an awesome supporter by going to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. The show is brought to you by theschoolofpodcasting.com, where you get courses, coaching, and community all in one place. Use the coupon code COACH to sign up for either a monthly, quarterly, or yearly subscription. And when you go to Ask the Podcast Coach, you're looking at Podpage. And Podpage is an amazing thing. And I don't say that because I work there. I say that because it's an amazing thing. I have video from 2020 where Brendan hired me as a consultant to go, do you think anybody would buy this? And I'm like, yeah, like 30,000 podcasts have been through our system. Check it out at trypodpage.com. If you need more Jim Collison, and hey, who doesn't? just go over to theaverageguy.tv and check out his show, Home Gadget Geeks. And my mouse is not working. I am going to learn vidIQ. That's one of the things now that all these sessions are over. I dipped my toe in it, but that's what's coming. And it's time to go to not that, but this. Also, I should say, if you tried to join earlier by going to askthepodcastcoach.com/question, I had not started Zoom yet, and Zoom is now up and running. So if you want to jump in on the call, you can. But who's it going to be? Is it going to be Ralph from the Financially Confident Christian, or Greg from Indie Drop-In, or Craig? I can't talk as fast as this thing spins. There's Jody, the audio branding show. And so who will it be? Well, we're going to click on spin and find out. And the answer is, I'm going to guess, is it Chris? Is it going to stay on Chris? It is Chris from castahead.net. If you need a producer / editor / video / not go wrong with, it's so funny when I get distracted. Did you leave and come back? Wait a minute. We're having technical difficulties. You can go to castahead.net. Where is my, oh, wait, hold on. I got to go back to this. Okay, you're back. Did you leave?
No, you put me in the green room for some reason. I don't know why.
Because I was sitting there talking about Chris, and all of a sudden, and then you left again. That's weird. And all of a sudden I heard, bring, bring, bring. And I was like, well, wait, what's going on? Well, Jim has left me. So the joys of live. So Ralph, when you want to do a live show, remember moments like this. Andy's back. So
I got an interesting error message that said this stream is destroyed. It kicked me out for a second. I had to rejoin and said this stream is destroyed. I was like, oh,
that's a little yeah. I mean, that's a
I don't know what's going on. Ecamm.
Fun.
I don't know. It's fine.
Right.
It's fine. It's all fine. It's all fine.
Anyway, to go back to this, if you'd like to be an awesome supporter, you can do that like these awesome people if you're watching the video. Thank you to all of our awesome supporters. And you can do that by going over to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome and become an awesome supporter today. And so Ralph had a question. He said, I would like the group's opinion on the best day and time for a weekly small business live show where I'll be answering small business questions and providing coaching. So live coaching can be really cool. I know Natalie Ekdahl from BizChix, and that's BizChix, did interview shows, because back in the day, that's what you did. You interviewed entrepreneurs and $1 million fell from the ceiling. Well, when that didn't work, and she kept offering coaching, and then she finally brought on somebody that she gave them a discount on coaching. The discount was because it was live and it was going to be used on a podcast. It wasn't so much live as it was going to be used on the podcast. And so she did a couple coaching calls with people, and she said it was like her whole audience went, oh, that's what coaching is. And she said, and then, people started knocking on the door. So for a small business, see, part of me, right, you're like, well, if you go during the day, I don't know about you, Jim, you don't work from home, but I work from home, and I have a problem where people think, well, Dave's home, I'll just call him. And I'm like, I'm at work. It is between 8 and 5. I'm at a place called Podpage that happens to be my spare bedroom, but and I remember once the power went out and I went over to my brother's house and it was still between 8 and 5, and I'm typing at the keyboard, and he did not get the hint that I'm like, I'm doing my job, like, leave me alone. So during the day might work because they're busy during the day, which means family time is at night if they're doing that correctly. But a lot of times small businesses don't adhere to the 8 to 5 rule, and they work whenever they can. They work all the time. For me, the key to live, and there are many hurdles. The beautiful thing of live is you get instant feedback. And that's us after doing this over 10 years. And we've done it the same time for 10 plus years. Saturday at 10:30. So I would pick, now why did I pick Saturday at 10:30? Because at the time I was married and my ex-wife was still asleep. So I'm like, oh, I can do this show now and it won't take away.
You were still married when we started this?
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I was in
forgot about
Cleveland.
that.
Yeah, I was in Cleveland when
about
we
that.
started this. Yeah. And because I remember I had that big hunking board with 2 mixed minuses going, and yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's crazy. It's crazy.
yeah, so that's
Crazy.
why I picked this time, and I just never moved. And anytime I ever hint to move, people are like, "No,
Well,
you're
and I was
Saturday."
editing my podcast. This Saturday mornings are when I edit my podcast, and you went live, and I saw you go live, and you were wanting somebody, so I jumped in to join you. So that time we kind of picked it by accident. But to your point, Dave, like, because we've been so consistent, we gain, like, people know they can count on it, like the
Yeah.
like the trains. They it's going to show up. And so I think there's some consistency. I don't know if the time matters as much as the consistency matters. If you're going to do it with people, they need to know you're going to be there. And then no matter what you do live, it's just never going to be as popular as the recorded version, right? Never going to be as popular.
Yeah, not even close. I mean, Jeff C does a live show on Fridays. I rarely, if ever, watch it live because I'm busy doing my own stuff on Fridays.
Day, right?
Yeah.
For you and me both. It's in the middle of the workday. I see it pop up on LinkedIn all the time. And I'm like, oh, well, have a great show, Jeff. That's usually what I say when I see it. Pops up. Jeff, have a great show. But I'm usually, Fridays at 11 or whatever, 10 or 11, I'm usually, for a long time, my own podcast was going on in that slot for Gallup. So, yeah, but there will be people who will come and join you at that time. And if that's what you're looking for, if you're looking for that, consistency is key. Just beyond the shadow of a doubt. We did a live podcast every Friday this year at 11 a.m. As soon as we finished the season and stopped doing it, I had people emailing me, "Where's the podcast?
Yeah.
Aren't you going to keep going?" Like, no, we finished the season. I know, but aren't you going to keep going? I need something to listen to. So the key is get those people to build it into their habits. It's the same reason you all show up live, folks, at 10:30 Eastern, 9:30 Central.
So if we switch to like Thursday nights, which wouldn't work for you because that's when you do your show, but if we switch to a different time, let's say we started doing this Wednesday at 7, we would lose this audience. Some of them would follow, but eventually we would get more people. The Wednesday night people like, oh, I was gonna. The tough part is, especially for live. I remember Jay Moore, the comedian. He did a show, I forget the name of it, but it was about Hollywood and agents and actors, and it was about, and so the media loved it because it was about them. And it had all sorts of star power. Jay was a pretty popular comedian at the time, and it should have taken off. It should have gone crazy. And the problem was it was on Thursday nights against this little show called Friends. And so I think it did maybe 1.5 seasons. So that's the thing. It's just, I would say try it if this is something you want to do, because Ralph is really good at answering questions. If you just get him to talk about something, he's got 30 years of experience. And so I like that strategy of just answer questions versus, do, the whole script thing and that whole 9 yards. I would try it. I'd give it at least a month, probably 2. And just realize live is not a magic bullet. Like, this show hasn't grown crazy because it's live. And again, we probably get 9 to 10 times more people listening to it later than we do here. And Stephanie says, hey, it took 10 years to build an engaged audience for this live show. I never see y'all advertise it. It's like a secret. I mention it in my newsletter every week that goes out. I'm trying to figure out when we got our audience.
On LinkedIn. It's posted on LinkedIn, and it's a part of. I mean, I talk about it on my show.
Yeah.
And by the way, we're not trying to explain this away. It's a great point. I mean, we could do more advertising for it. Although I think we're comfortable with the audience that we have, and if it's as good as we think it is, word of mouth should do some things. It has done some stuff. Dave's out in the community. I mean, he's speaking at conferences all the time. So, and I know you mention it. It's on all your stuff. It's in my bio and all my stuff.
Yeah.
So,
anytime I have somebody go, And I'll be like, oh, well, you should join the School of Podcasting. Like, oh, it's just not in the budget. I will say, oh, I have something that's free. You just have to wake up at 10:30 on Saturday mornings. And what's interesting is very seldom does that person get up to get free consulting. And I'm like, then you're not real. I don't know. My thought goes, maybe they're busy people and they want to sleep in. But I'm like, I sleep into 8:30, crazy on Saturday.
Yeah, don't get crazy now, Dave. I'm always surprised at how many people we get at this hour on a Saturday morning. You guys come back consistently. It always surprises me. So I always like, wow, it's 35 or 40 people who are very committed to it and enjoy it in a way to be a part of this group. And it's kind of fun. I don't think anything we say you don't all for the live folks, you already know. I mean, I think there's a few nuggets in there, but you come out to be a part of the community and we appreciate that.
Yeah, Jeff says, I love doing a live show, but keeping the time consistent, that is the key. Because, I mean, if you think about any time a show is not doing the way they want it to, or in some cases, networks just do stupid stuff on TV. They'll take one of their best shows and they have this other show that's not doing great. And they're like, oh, I know. We'll move this to another night right before the show that's not doing well. And then this great show will be the lead in. And if people don't change the channel, they'll start watching the show after it. But as soon as you start moving shows around and people can't find it, you've doomed it. Yeah, Dan says this is basically Saturday morning cartoons. I need to bring in some cartoon sound effects. And I don't know, later Jim will drop an anvil on my head. Podno says, yeah, Podno says, I've listened to this show for 2 years. This is only the second time I've watched the live experience. There you go. It's always just to see how different Jim looks, how he is in my head.
Oh, yeah.
How did he look in his head?
More handsome or less handsome?
Yeah, that's me. I'm like,
that's the question.
I thought Jim was an ogre, and man, that guy's handsome. Yeah.
It is funny the faces you make up when it's audio only. You have to put a face in there, right? That's your brain does that when you're listening to audio. It's putting a face in there. And when you haven't seen the person before, you don't know what they look like. You just make it up. And then the first time you meet them, you're like, that's nothing like I thought it was.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Here's a fun question that we're going to dangerously tiptoe around a subject.
All right. Let's be careful.
I was like, all right, here we go.
Be careful.
It says, hey guys, the title of this on Reddit was advice on low ratings from people in the community. I wanted a little advice. I've been podcasting for 2 years. I started out recapping reality TV shows for the first year and 9 months. But this summer, I decided to start a new channel and began podcasting about religion with my sister as the co-host with a modern take so that even non-religious girls specifically could feel included on their path to finding God. Just a simple podcast where we open up various topics every 2 weeks discussing topics related to the religion, but also adding a modern take to it to help girls who are still on their religious journey so they don't feel alone and see that we also are on the path, although we're not perfect. Unfortunately, this past week, a group of people in my community continue to spam my podcast ratings with 1 stars. Dun, dun, dun. And I'm not sure how to remove those. Well, you can't. Or put a stop to it, and you can't. And as I don't know who it is exactly, it's Jim Mom 37. It says right there on their review. But with this being about religion and checking the analytics verifies to me that it's people I knew or know of. I assume they don't consider me that religious, but everyone is on their own path, as I do keep it to myself a lot. So maybe it came as a surprise to many, but I don't want the continuous bad ratings to stop me from doing what I love. Then quit reading them. Any advice on dealing with personal attacks on your own podcast? Jim, I've not prepped you. What are the 3 things you don't talk about in a podcast?
That's religion, politics, and sex. I don't know. What's the third one?
Sex or abortion, either one.
Okay.
And so you're in the religious space, and the reason you don't talk about those 3 things is it triggers people. Now, if you want to, you can. Jen Briney does a show about politics, and guess what? 50% of the time, her audience hates her because she'll be like, and the Republicans did this really stupid thing. And then in the next episode, she'll be like, and the Democrats did this really nasty thing. And every time she does that, and I remember she's much better at it now. But in the early days, she'd come on the mic crying because people were just brutal because it's politics. And those are things and that's the thing, all those things people they are passionate about them. And so not only will they fight back with an answer, but they will, they just go crazy. So that's true. Now, Ralph says, I talk religion all the time. And so, your time's coming. Somebody's going to throw in there that,
or maybe not. I mean, listen, for folks who have, they're in a lane, let's just call it. They're in a lane and they're going. Sometimes you don't invite that other side to come in or
Right.
they don't see the value in making it work. In this particular case, it sounds like sometimes we start off more general and we attract this big audience. Then we make a statement, right? Whatever that is. And we make that statement that divides our audience. And that's generally when these things kind of happen. I think if you start your podcast and you're in a lane and you're hard in that lane, the people who don't agree with you, they just don't listen, right? They're not going to show up and listen. And unless you go after them in some particular way, they're probably not going to feel it's worth their time to go out and leave a 1-star and whatever.
That is
right?
true. That's something to think about. Somebody had to sign up for an Apple account, go to your site, click on a button, write the review. You move somebody to do
sometimes
that.
you have to go after them. You have to go after them. I mean, so generally it kind of happens in these two camps, right? You started more general and then you said something that divided the audience, or you made a comment. Maybe you're in a lane and you made a comment about the other lane and it got out, or you went after him, hard, or it came out on social or whatever, some of those kinds of things. And then they come back after you. I think in a lot of cases, if you're just true, if you start your podcast and stay in your lane, I think for the most part, you're going to be okay.
Yeah. Well, Craig says, aren't religious podcasts a hugely success? I don't know that they're hugely successful.
Yeah, they can be.
But it is a huge chunk of podcasts are, religions of all sorts, not just Christianity. And then Dan says those topics can easily become quickly an echo chamber. And then I love Craig says, maybe it's just a bad show. Maybe the 1-star review has nothing to do. But
that's very true.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't do a religious or a political show or whatever. If you want to talk about sex and pronouns and all that other fun stuff, I'm not saying don't do that. I'm just saying realize that you're in areas that people are highly passionate about. And you're likely to get some people that are like, you don't know. Like I saw someone yesterday. Oh, you know what? I'm not going to go there. But they said one fact, and I know for a fact there are 5 other facts that, and the problem is facts are a little squirrely these days. So DR says, is writing a review or is it just clicking on a single star? That I don't know. But here's my thing. I don't look at reviews. If Jim said, hey, you got to check out this show, it's called the Gurn Goes to College Show, I'm going to type in Gurn, I'm going to find it, and I'm going to click on follow. And then I'm going to listen and I'm going to decide. I won't even look at reviews. And if I did and it said, this is the dumbest show hosted by a guy named Gurn, I'd be like, well, I'll be the decider of that. And I would click follow and listen, because not everybody, I remember when I was doing the podcast rodeo show and I would say, yeah, this show is, and I'd have people like, you don't get it. These guys are hilarious. I'm like, well, that's why you should have your show on that show. I'm like, not everybody agrees with Dave. Podnose says, I used to have a mantra, love your haters. Oh, I had a troll that I had a lot of fun with, usually because they want the attention. Yes, I have a clip of Mark Maron talking about trolls, but it is definitely not, safe for work. But at the end, he basically says, ignore the trolls. But he explains how they, daddy didn't give enough hugs, so you come to annoy me, blah, blah, blah. Randy says, I was harassed by an individual on Facebook and Instagram because of an episode of my show, Bible Bites, when I discussed Pride Month and sin. Yeah, that's, again, so now you've got two. You've got religion and pronouns, and those two clubs don't typically get along. You know, even Craig said, could be terrible audio. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Yeah, I love this. There's a pizza place somewhere that gives away pizza to people that leave 1-star reviews on Yelp. Nice. Well, that's a nice way to make friends with people. When I got into the whole fiasco of podcast movement and their Ben Shapiro thing, it was really interesting because I woke up, I commented on it and just said, hey, I don't get it. Why can't that guy come to podcast movement? There's a person I hate in my high school, and he came to our reunion. Like, he has a right to be there. He's in my class, and Ben Shapiro's a podcaster, so he has a right to be there. And I woke up the next day with a bunch of arrows in my back on Twitter. And I just said, hey, I even said at the beginning of this, like, I don't understand this space. I'm not in this space. I'm a middle-aged white guy. So, you know, like, I'm going to say something stupid here. And then they all said, you said something stupid. And I'm like, yeah, can we get on Zoom and talk about this? And people lost their mind. They're like, wait, what do you mean? I go, can we get on Zoom and have a conversation? And 3 people took me up on it. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, I get your point. So, yeah. So just when I saw that, I was like, well, you know, if you're going to talk about just talking about podcasting, some people are like, you know, you have old curmudgeons like me going, YouTube is not a podcast, right? So every time somebody brings up videos like, oh no, don't poke the bear.
But what if it is? What if it is?
Yeah, and Danny says, one of the things I enjoy about being a Gen X Scotsman is thick skin. Don't give a crap what other people think about me, except for those who matter. That is a big one. Yeah, just, one thing I learned from the Taylor Swift thing, which is kind of obvious, but she turned off her comments on her Instagram like 10 years ago. And she goes, I don't miss it. So, you know, John Jamango, my show is about news and politics. I get hate mail all the time. It's none of my business what people think about me. There you go. So, you know, you're going to have that. It's the problem is you can't you could complain to Apple. I've heard of people, if it's along the lines of hate, like a hate crime or whatever it is, I've heard of people getting 1-star reviews removed, but I just don't put that much weight on reviews. I know we love a little pat on the back, and I love good reviews, but you know, my 1-star review was a really bad ad for a really bad show or something like that. You know, so I can quote that one like scripture, you know, so our negative reviews do impact us, but in theory, I usually try to just brush it off or shake it off to quote the lovely Taylor Swift.
The billionaire Taylor Swift.
Yeah. It's easy to shake it off when you got a couple, you know.
We have a couple billion. Yeah, we have a couple billion just to throw in. It's fine. We're going to get some hate mail on this one. Oh, yeah. I just realized I've been answering questions in chat from my live account on YouTube. It's not even me. Shoot. Sorry, guys. I'm sure everybody knew who it was, but I just, you know, YouTube's got that thing, right, where you log in. I mean, is it a podcast or isn't it? But they've got this thing. I'm logged in with the wrong account, so I'm sorry about that.
No, I see your little glasses there. The Average Guy TV. Is that after? Did you log in and log back in?
Yeah. I'm in my personal brand here for that. This is the live. That's my live channel. That I must have been doing some work in there. So, anyways, doesn't matter. Not to distract. That was stupid. I even mentioned it. That was meta. Should have never mentioned it on the live show. DR, thanks for that super chat that you.
Holy cow! Appreciate Wait, what? Super chat? That means we got to do that. Yay! So thank you very much for that. That's a beautiful thing. And I always have to wait.
Well, and she did say the Empowered Podcasting event in Charlotte right now. At the end of the month, 26, 27, 28. It is on the weekend. So if you were complaining about Dave, if you were complaining about podcast movement being during the week, this is one on the weekend. The code EPCLD50 will get you 50% off. EPCLD50 get you 50% off until it's a Labor Day weekend sale. So most of our live folks, and maybe, will you publish this by the 5th?
Yes, this will be out today, and it went out yesterday in the Podpage newsletter. I've been I'm really looking forward to this event. And so I promoted it on LinkedIn, on Twitter, even on Blue Sky. I never log into Blue Sky, but there's Blue Sky and Threads. And Mark is a great guy, Mark Ronick. And I'm looking for it. To me, I kind of go, this smells like early Podfest.
Yeah.
And that was the best. And so this is a great sale. If you're thinking of going,
$100 off, basically, right? It's $200.
Yeah.
$100 off.
And the hotel isn't super. It's not the Gaylord, but what is? It's not a Red Roof Inn, but that's kind of a good thing. Most of the Red Roof Inns I've ever even
Super
seen.
8.
Yeah.
It's a Super 8. Oh,
yeah.
Don't.
Yeah. What's your go-to hotel?
Holiday Inn Express.
Yeah, that's me.
Even though we joke about that,
Yeah.
It's the one I stay at all the time. I do stay at a Holiday Inn Express.
Yeah, it's usually a little over $100.
Yeah.
You know, Hampton Inn is another one, but those can get kind of pricey. But Holiday Inn Express it's the one I'm like, okay. And then I use my Expedia account.
Used to be a solid 99. That was back in the day.
Oh yeah.
99, $900 for a room. You could do it pretty solidly. Now, not so much. But it sounds like it's going to be a good event.
Yeah, if you it's in Charlotte, North Carolina. So if you're near them, check it out. But it's going to, for me, it just, we've got a lot of indie podcasters there. You can connect, you can learn and grow, you can collaborate. I mean, here's the thing, in terms of what happens when you go to these events. So I went to the one in Cleveland. Well, first I went to Podcast Movement. I met a bunch of our customers, but my favorite thing of Podcast Movement was Deidre from Cap Show. That's where she's from. Had a baby, and it was like a baby, like 3-month-old baby, which is the best because they can hold up their own head, but they're still, and she's just
now,
like,
wait a minute. Was it 3 months old when she had it, or was it 3 months after she'd had? That'd be unusual to have a 3.
Yeah. So the baby was 3 months, and she just goes, "Do you do cuddles?" And I go, "What?" And she hands me a baby, and I was like, "Oh, it's got that new baby smell." Like, and she just went, you're making all those baby noises.
So
and then because she was a female, she cried and wanted nothing to do with me. And I was like, that is the typical
Guys
female
can cry
response.
too, Dave. Guys can cry too. I would have cried too. I'm just. But
that was awesome. But at the Content Creator Expo, this keynote speaker got up. There's a local thing in Ohio called Signal, and they're trying to bring back local news. And I said, hey, I've reached out to the local Akron chapter. I can't get anybody to return my email. I said, I do a podcast about Akron, Ohio. I go, I need content. And I go, you guys need exposure. I'm thinking peanut butter and jelly. And she goes, that sounds like a great idea. I go, yeah, I've emailed your editor. I can't get anybody in Akron to even say no. And she goes, oh, here's my card. And I said, here's my card. I go, because I do podcasting. She goes, oh. She goes, well, I'm from Columbus. She goes, I know a senator that's getting ready to launch a podcast, but he needs some help. And I go, please give him my card. So there are all these things that happen when you go to a live event if you make sure to get out of your shell. I got to hang out with Shane Whaley for pretty much the whole conference. We sat next to each other most of the sessions. And the beautiful thing is, when if I go back to Chicago, that was the podcast event for higher education. And Greg from RSS.com said, you're not a podcast, you're a brand. And he goes, you have to figure out what you want to be known for. And I thought that was amazing. It sounds silly, but I really thought about it. But I met Katie Brinkley, I believe at Podcast Movement. I eventually had her on my show. And I know this guy named Jay Acunzo. I've read his book. He's a big shot smarty pants guy, and he's a great speaker. He was there to talk about presenting. And at the end of it, I kind of wanted to meet him, and I saw him walking by, and I just said, hey, Jay, that was a great presentation. And he came over and shook my hand. We had like this little baby conversation, but he started off with like, hey, I met somebody last night that said I should meet you. So here again, having people know what you're known for. And then it was Katie Brinkley. And so then she walked by and she goes, oh, you two are, she's like, it's happening. It's happening. So and I don't know that you get that from Zoom meetings. and those types of things. I think when you go to an empowered, this is their second one. Stephanie wants to know, is it always in Charlotte? I don't know where the first one was, to be honest with you. But so yeah, if you haven't been to a conference, also if you go into the Podfest group, they're doing a lot of local meetups. Like I know they're going to be in Los Angeles next week, so keep that in mind.
You see the pod notes?
I did not. Holy cow! Do I have to hit this again? And somewhere I have this. There we go. The full effect of that. Thank you very much. Thank you for 2 years of entertaining every Monday morning on the treadmill. Thank you. I'd give you more, but Cridlin and Sethi swallowed the other 50% of my thank you money.
Cridlin guy.
That Cridlin.
First of all, who? And then second of all, man, he's high maintenance. He's talking all the time, writing all the time. Come on, Cridlin. Jeez.
Flying all over the world, giving us information.
Stuff. Jeez.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Giving us information we can't find other places. What are you thinking about?
Emails, Cridlin. You send me too many emails.
That's it. Well, Jim, what is coming up on Home Gadget Geeks?
Yeah, I almost never do this. A couple weeks ago, I was talking about this Lutron. It's upside down. Lutron plug that you can put outside.
Yeah.
I do gadget reviews. I didn't do a podcast this week, so I thought I'll indulge me for a second. I'll throw the link to the review that I did in the chat. I don't do a lot of reviews. Love some feedback on it, if you would. I threw the link in the chat if you want to head out there and just give me some feedback on the review. That would be awesome. But yeah, you can't take a week off. And I did that. I had a buddy get married this weekend. Long wedding weekend. We had ceremonies Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and then lunch today. So you can get it now at theaverageguy.tv.
There we go. And on the School of Podcasting, it's question of the month time. And so the question of the month was, have you ever hired somebody to work on your podcast? If so, what for? What did they do? And how did it work out? And that was a question from the one and only Mark DeCote from podcastbranding.co. So that'll be coming up on the show, along with probably some of the stuff I just talked about. It's one of those things where I didn't realize how much live events can help until COVID. And that's when I just saw a lot of my show go. Brrr. So, wow, we've got hot takes in the chat room. Holy cow! Attacking me for my political choice. Well, again, political choices. Sure. I remember when people could just like, oh, you're a Democrat? Yeah, I'm a Republican.
No, Dave. That's never existed. That's a fantasy. And we have always been getting after each other about stuff since the beginning. Cain and Abel, friends. Cain and
That's
Abel.
Right.
We've always been getting after each other. So don't think the old days were great. They weren't any better than they are today.
So thanks, guys, for all the kind words. We will see you next week with another episode of Ask the Podcast Coach.